I kicked out my husband and his manipulative friend after he moved her into our house and wanted to sleep in the same room with her. I am 28. My husband is 30. We have been married for years. We got married after 3 years of dating. Everything in our relationship was fine, except for one thing: his close bond with his best friend. His best friend, as he calls her, is his childhood neighbor. They were always together. I will call her Fiona. Fiona and my husband went to the same kindergarten, the same elementary, middle, and high school. They even got into the same college, though in different departments. They had been inseparable since childhood, and I can't even forget about it because they always bring it up at every opportunity. They only drifted apart when they started working. That's when I met my husband. Fiona once told me that I was the third most important woman in my husband's life. First his mother, second her, and only then comes me. She said it as if joking, but I am sure that she actually thinks so. Honestly, I always thought that she didn't like me and saw me as a rival. When my husband and I had just started dating, he introduced me to her as his older friend, and I tried to be nice to her, but she immediately started mocking how much makeup I wore and said that I didn't need to impress her. This happened again and again. She constantly made little digs about my makeup, my clothes, and so on. There were also mocking compliments, after which I felt insecure. Once she directly told me that my husband had a taste for dumb blondes and I am blonde. I think you already understand who I had to deal with. I tried several times to talk to my husband about this even before the wedding. I said that I had a bad feeling about Fiona, but he always brushed it off and insisted that over time I would get used to her, that not everyone likes her because she never filters her words and is too straightforward for most women. Probably the fact that my husband put others down so she would look good should have made me wary. But honestly, back then it seemed like a small thing compared to the fact that I could be with him, because he was perfect in everything else. He was exactly the man I dreamed of: smart, funny, charming. And I was ready to tolerate Fiona because I really wanted to be with him, and he always made me feel that he loved me, so everything was fine. Over time, I stopped paying attention to Fiona and didn't let her get to me. And when she got a boyfriend, it got even better because she stopped picking on me for no reason. 4 years ago, Fiona met Eddie on a dating app, and already a year later, they got engaged. To say that she lost her head over him is to say nothing. And apparently he was in love with her too. Despite their obvious attachment to each other, I still think that a year is not enough to really get to know a person. And they hadn't lived together long enough to even think about marriage. But Fiona and I are not friends, and I knew that. If I tried to tell her anything about it, she would make a scene. So I just kept quiet. I told my husband about it, hoping that he would carefully nudge her toward a sensible decision. But he only marveled at how great it was that he and Fiona got engaged almost at the same time and might even have their weddings at the same time. They even discussed the idea of a joint wedding, but I stopped it at an early stage, saying that Fiona and I had 2 different views on everything. And fortunately, she didn't insist. She married Eddie about a month after our wedding, and everything was fine until recently. 5 months ago, Fiona confessed to my husband that she could not get pregnant. She and Eddie were going to get tested because they had been unsuccessfully trying for almost half a year. Unfortunately, it turned out that Fiona was infertile. From that moment, their marriage began to fall apart. And although they tried to go to a family therapist, it didn't help her because Eddie still filed for divorce. He didn't want to be with a woman he couldn't have children with and wasn't going to waste his life on a childless marriage. That was a low blow on his part. And to be honest, I felt sorry for Fiona. She began visiting us much more often than before, and I tolerated it because I understood that she was having a hard time now, and my husband was apparently her only real friend. I couldn't get annoyed about her frequent visits because every time she came to us, she only cried, and my husband tried to comfort her. It was almost impossible to be angry at someone who was already going through such a horror because I knew she really loved Eddie. Then the divorce process and negotiations about the division of property began. They had to see each other often, and it was even harder for her. She began to completely fall into despair. Then my husband asked me if she could live with us for a while until she felt better, because, in her words, being around him supposedly made her start feeling normal again. This was almost 2 weeks ago, and as soon as I let her into my house, I immediately regretted it. She criticized literally everything I did, and she got away with it. After all, she was in depression. She didn't like the food. She didn't like how our house was furnished. She didn't like my shows. In the end, we had to do everything by her rules because according to my husband, she needed it right now. I more than once said that I wanted Fiona to leave and that if she didn't like everything, she should go back to living with her parents. But he begged me to let her stay because he was afraid she might do something stupid to herself if we kicked her out in such a vulnerable state. So I didn't say anything to her. I didn't want that on my conscience, but the day before yesterday, I still had to kick them both out because they crossed all boundaries. When I came home from work, I saw that my husband had moved some of his things from our bedroom to the guest room where Fiona was living. He had deliberately come early to organize all this. When I came in, he and Fiona were still carrying his things into that room. I was shocked and asked my husband to talk alone, but he said we could talk right in front of Fiona. Honestly, for the first time in recent weeks, she looked happy. I asked why he was moving into the guest room, and he calmly replied that he would now be living in the same room with Fiona. For a few seconds, I just froze. When I asked, what the hell is going on? He said that Fiona had been having panic attacks for several days in a row and needed someone to comfort her at night when she woke up in a panic because of the divorce. I immediately told him this was out of the question and that he was crazy if he thought I would accept it. But he once again used his favorite excuse about Fiona. She's like a sister to him, and I have nothing to worry about. Both of them stood there smiling at me as if that smile could make everything that was happening normal and acceptable. I was so angry and disappointed that I wanted to hit them both, but instead my rage reached such a level that I decided to act differently. I smiled back at them and said that I completely understood them and that for me everything was absolutely fine. My husband even dared to say that he was sure I would understand, and they continued setting up the room. Meanwhile, I went back to our bedroom and got the house documents. My father gave me this house when I got my first job, and it is registered only to me. That is, legally the house belongs to me. When I found the papers, I went back to the guest room and very sweetly asked if they had finished unpacking. When they said yes, I replied that it was time for them to pack again because very soon they would be out on the street where they could play happy family as much as they wanted. My husband couldn't understand for a few seconds what was happening until I showed him the documents and said that the house was mine and that I was no longer going to put up with this in my own home and allow them to humiliate me like this. He tried to joke, thinking I was kidding, but when he realized I wasn't laughing, he said that I was acting absurdly and couldn't just kick them out. I replied that I could and that I was already doing it, so arguing with me was pointless. I said that he made me sick and Fiona even more because right now she was something between a hysteric and a whiner, and that was extremely annoying. Fiona, of course, started crying again, and my husband began defending her and accused me of always being jealous of her because I was insecure. I didn't even deny it because it was true. I really am like that. But the reason wasn't me. It was their twisted relationship. I told them that if they couldn't live without each other, then they shouldn't even try to start relationships with other people and ruin their lives like they ruined mine. After that, a nasty argument began. But in the end, they still left. My husband said he felt insulted because he loved me, and it still wasn't enough for me. Fiona didn't stop crying and finally accused me of jealousy and cruelty. I didn't say anything to her. I had no strength left to argue with them anymore. I just wanted them gone. I thought all my problems would end as soon as they left. But apparently I was wrong because as soon as I kicked them out, our mutual friends, the same ones who never before cared about our marriage, started texting me that I was making a mountain out of a molehill. In their opinion, my husband just wanted to support Fiona because panic attacks are serious, and instead of showing sympathy, I turned it into drama and brought it down to my own insecurities. I immediately realized that he had put them up to it because all the messages were like carbon copies. I tried to ignore them. But then he also involved his family. Every single one of them kept saying that I was acting horribly by kicking them out when Fiona was going through such a hard time. They said that I had no heart, that I didn't deserve a husband like him. Apparently, from the very beginning, it was clear that I wasn't good enough for him. And deep down, I knew it myself, which is why I felt threatened by Fiona. I realized it was useless to argue with them and just block everyone for my own peace of mind. None of these people tried to understand what I was feeling. They didn't care. They only cared about my husband and Fiona and about how they felt. I thought blocking them would solve the problem, and I was already going to file for divorce. But my husband contacted me again from another number and said that he was still willing to come back to me if I apologized. In this message, he again repeated that he always considered Fiona the sister he never had and never felt romantic feelings for her, that I had misunderstood everything. He said that he cared about her and even loved her, but it was platonic, brotherly love, not the kind he felt for me. He said the thought of living his life without me was killing him, that he made a mistake by leaving then. But he also believes that I overreacted and misunderstood everything. He asked me to think about it with a cool head and calmly weigh the consequences of my actions because he didn't want me to make a mistake I would regret for the rest of my life. He was ready to come back and restore our relationship if we both apologized to each other for the misunderstanding. I really don't know how to react to this because in my opinion, I didn't go too far. And now I'm not even sure if I should divorce him at all since he keeps insisting that Fiona is like a sister to him. Honestly, this message threw me off balance and now I'm not sure whether I should go through with it. Am I really the bad one for kicking my husband out after he said he wanted to sleep in the same room with his childhood friend to comfort her during her nighttime panic attacks? So, before we continue and move on to the update, I suggest you write in the comments your opinion on this matter. Personally, I think the author did absolutely the right thing, and it doesn't matter what kind of relationship her husband and that friend have. I mean, whether they sleep together, have a romantic relationship, or a relationship like brother and sister. It just doesn't matter because it's still not normal. If they have a brother and sister kind of relationship, that's also complete trash. This is some kind of mental disorder, in my opinion. Actually, this situation reminded me of the movie The Dreamers 2003. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. There, a guy meets a brother and sister who have rather strange relations. They didn't seem to sleep together, but still allowed themselves much more than a brother and sister should. They were stuck in some kind of childhood phase, already being fully grown people. And it all ends with the main character simply not being able to take it anymore and leaving because these to start doing complete crazy things, putting their lives in danger. And not some minor danger, but actual deadly danger. So yes, absolutely. The author should leave such a husband if he allows himself this kind of thing. Well, now let's continue. Update 1. Well, it looks like I really was blind. The comments on my first post opened my eyes because I realized I had simply lost my vigilance. And now my marriage is ruined. I should have put a stop to his friendship with Fiona right from the start. Even if we broke up then, it would have been worth it because at least I wouldn't have to be divorcing over her now. I honestly don't understand how I let it all go this far. Probably I just loved him too much. Maybe I still do. That's why I seriously thought about forgiving him and getting back together. In my defense, I'll say he knows how to talk beautifully and for years tried to drill into me that his friendship with Fiona was completely normal and my insecurity was my problem. He constantly gaslighted me, convincing me that I was wrong. It was years of manipulation, and in the end, he brought me to the boiling point when he decided to sleep in the same room with her. That was the last straw. My parents support me and think I'm doing the right thing by filing for divorce. After this, restoring the marriage is impossible. He can't just take back his words, and I don't think he'll break off his relationship with Fiona for my sake. It's been a couple of days, and I still haven't answered him. I don't even know where they are now, and honestly, I don't want to know because I definitely wouldn't like any of the options. I deserve someone who will put me first, and my husband has never done that. I was a complete fool, hoping that someday he would put me above Fiona. But now I understand that this will never happen and we're better off parting ways. I filed for divorce and hope that in the next few days he will be served the papers. Once again, thanks to everyone who left comments and helped me realize what a fool I was. I really needed to hear that. Update 2. My husband was served the papers a week ago, and he decided not to contest the divorce. You'd think that if he wasn't going to fight for the marriage in court, then he'd have nothing more to say to me. But he came to me yesterday evening to tell me how disappointed he was that I was leaving him over such a trifle. I absolutely did not expect his visit, especially after I had humiliated him and kicked both of them out. But he said he needed to pick up some things, so I had to let him in. When he finished packing, he sat down across from me on the couch and said he wanted to talk. I didn't say anything, just waited for him to speak. He said he wouldn't contest the divorce if I insisted, but he wanted me to know that, in his opinion, I was making a mistake. He said he had always loved only me and was offended by the fact that I could even think he might cheat on me. and especially with Fiona. He said that right now they're living at his parents' place, and everyone in the family is terribly upset by my decision to leave over such nonsense. After he was served the papers, my mother-in-law supposedly even wanted to come talk to me herself, but he stopped her because he respects my choice and doesn't want to pressure me through relatives. This seemed a bit hypocritical to me, considering that this is the same person who persuaded all our friends and relatives to bombard me with messages begging me to take him back, calling me a horrible, heartless person, and all sorts of other crap after I kicked them out. I couldn't help but remind him of it, and he clearly got nervous. He started denying his involvement, saying everyone wrote to me on their own from the goodness of their hearts, and he had nothing to do with it. But I'm not an idiot. I showed him those same messages from our mutual friends, and they were all like carbon copies. It was obvious someone had given them instructions on what exactly to say, and they just sent a copy text, so his denials changed nothing. The fact is, he had already tried to corner me, it just didn't work, and now he was choosing another tactic. Then he tried to steer the conversation away and began complaining about how hard the last few days had been for him, realizing that our marriage was coming to an end. He started crying right there on the couch, saying that life would never be the same without me, that he kept thinking about how this could be fixed. It was already pretty fake, but the tears were just too much. I didn't feel a drop of sympathy for him and said the first thing that came to mind after his words about wanting to fix everything. I said that maybe I would reconsider the divorce if he promised never to see Fiona again, and that really shocked him. He stopped crying almost instantly, and we both froze in silence, waiting to see who would speak first. For you to understand, I had no intention of staying married to him, regardless of his answer. Even if he said he would break it off with Fiona, I would still leave. But of course, he didn't say that. Instead, he began to argue, saying I was being unfair. He started the same song I'd heard in every argument about their friendship, that she is his oldest friend, that she is like a sister to him, that he can't abandon her, especially now when she's going through such a hard time, that it would be cruel, but abandoning me, his wife to whom he made vows, that somehow. Okay, I was tired of hearing his excuses about why he has to keep being friends with Fiona, and I cut him off. I said that's exactly why I'm leaving. Even when he had a choice between staying with me or keeping his friendship with Fiona, he chose her. So now he can't even complain that I didn't give him a chance or that I overreacted. I was right about everything, and he had nothing to say to that. He just got up and left. Now I just have to wait for the official procedures to begin. Update 3.ID has already been several weeks since the last update, and today we met in court for the first time. By the laws of our state, we are required to wait at least 6 months before the divorce is finalized. After the hearing, my husband came up to me and said that he was ready to wait all those 6 months if it would help me come back to him. I was just floored that he was still trying to get me back, even though we hadn't seen or spoken to each other for many weeks. I honestly thought we had nothing more to talk about since it had already come to divorce. But he still started talking and tried to make contact. I asked him if he was still living with Fiona, and he couldn't answer. We just stood there in silence. I rolled my eyes and was already about to get into my car when he said that Fiona couldn't go back to her parents because her mother is unbearable and blames Fiona for the divorce. Apparently, she is supposedly guilty because she can't have children. That's exactly why she first moved in with us and then with his parents. I understood that I probably should have felt sorry for her, but honestly, it was very hard to feel compassion for a person who had always made me feel like nothing and ultimately became the reason for my divorce. I replied to my husband, already sitting in the car, that Fiona had plenty of other friends, including single ones, who would gladly take her in. It's just that he doesn't want to admit that there's something wrong with their friendship. Because of it, we are divorcing. But he is still not ready to accept the obvious and admit that moving her in with us was absolutely unnecessary. We argued again, and this only further confirmed what an idiot I had been all this time. I can't even believe I ever thought about giving our marriage another chance. This relationship cost me too much. Friends, nerves, and a lot of money. Because Fiona lived with us for free, and now I also have to pay a lawyer. It's just madness how much I was willing to forgive just because I love my husband, while he didn't love me enough to admit that moving Fiona in with us was a mistake. He is absurdly stubborn when it comes to her, and I think it's good that we're divorcing. Now he can finally be with the woman he really loves and stop wasting my time. I really hope he finally understands this and stops chasing me. Update for .so. Something completely insane happened. I still can't believe. My husband said such horrible things about Fiona. We saw each other just a few days ago, and I didn't expect him to show up again so soon. But yesterday, he came to finally admit that he was wrong and that I was right about absolutely everything. He apologized to me and admitted his mistakes. Honestly, I didn't even think I would ever hear this. I still can't believe that he finally realized how wrong he had been and that Fiona had indeed always been against me. I came home from work and was quietly going about my business when he suddenly started pounding furiously on the door. When I opened it, he just burst into the house without even waiting for me to say anything, and I immediately realized he was on edge. At first, I thought he had come to start a fight, and I was already about to call the cops to have him removed from my property, but to my surprise, he started crying again. Only this time for real, not for show like last time. I dropped everything and tried to calm him down. After all, I am also human. I'm not the kind of person who will just stand and watch someone cry without doing anything. Even if it were Fiona herself, I would have done the same. After some time, he calmed down a little and told me that he had taken a day off and spent the whole day at home because he was depressed about the divorce. And then Fiona came into his room to comfort him, but instead she started flirting with him. She had never done that before. He tried to push her away, telling her he wasn't in the mood for jokes. But she tried to press herself against him, and that's when he set a boundary. He realized that I had been right about her all along. And even though he himself had always seen her only as a friend or even like a sister, she had all this time been trying to hit on him. As a result, they had a big fight, and Fiona accused him of leading her on all these years and then marrying me, called him a traitor, packed her things, and moved back in with her parents. And now he came to apologize to me and say that I had been right about everything. He said he regretted taking me for granted and admitted that he actually doesn't deserve a woman like me, and that maybe this divorce would help him finally get his head straight. We talked a bit and cleared the air. I realized he hadn't been lying when he said he loved only me and saw Fiona as a sister. That wasn't enough for me to go back to him, but at least I felt much better about my decisions. We are still divorcing, but we will try to end everything on good terms. I really hope we can manage that. Well, that's all. Write your opinion in the comments. Watch our previous video. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if for some reason you haven't done so yet. And good luck to you.